my booktube channel. I don't really know what I'm doing. This is my first one, and so we'll see how this goes. I am excited to maybe do some longer form stuff. We'll see how it is. Yeah. Anyway, my name's Nick. I just started reading last year. I had never really read before last year, if I'm honest. I kind of was not really into books at all. I loved going to the bookstore, and I loved looking at books and all the other stuff that bookstores have to offer. Like at our big bookstore is probably very similar to like Barnes and Noble. There's like half the store is just stuff, like candles and blankets and board games, stuff like that. So I kind of just like going, grabbing a coffee and just looking around bookstores, but I never actually bought books or read books until last year. And so, my wife, Lindsay, is a huge book nerd, and she's one of those people that reads like over 100 books a year. And so she had always been kind of encouraging me like, hey, you should read. I think you'd like reading. And I was like, nah, I don't think I like it. It looks stressful, look at all the words that you got to read. And, I just, when I can watch something that's, no brainer. But as it turns out, I do like reading. She was reading. So what I'm going to do for this video is just kind of go through the first few books that I read last year that kind of like kickstarted my reading. It's kind of a weird mix, to be honest with you. Well, not like super weird, but like also kind of weird. My wife had really wanted me to read A Court of Thorns and Roses, ACOTAR, because she had read it, and it was really popular at the time. It still is, but I think she really just wanted to see my reaction to a book like that, and to maybe kind of show me that perhaps the books aren't quite what I thought they might be. I think I had kind of a stupid thing in my head where I was like, I'm only gonna read to learn something. You know what I mean? Like reading a story, that sounds awful. But that was just my own ignorance. So here we go. The first one that I read was not ACOTAR, actually. It was Clown in a Cornfield by Adam Cesare. This book, is it gonna focus there? Let's see if it does. Ooh, there we go. Nope. There we go. That one. This is a young adult book. It's a slasher horror book about a clown. Go figure. And it's great, honestly. I read this whole thing in a day. I was like, when I decided, hey, I'm gonna read, I was like, let's do this. I wanted to find something kind of like with an easy approach to start off, and I really wanted to make sure this worked. So I read this whole thing in a day. I picked it up early afternoon and then just started reading it and finished it that night. And I think because of the way my brain works, I was like scared that if I didn't just finish it, I would never finish a book. I would never go back to it. So I was like, I just gotta get this done so that I know I can finish a book, and then the rest will be easy. And that's kind of actually sort of what happened. I read this in a day, loved it. I thought this was great. Kind of looking back on it after having read so much more, my opinion on it may have changed a little bit, but I still think this was a really, really fun, really just campy, good time, slasher, small town horror book that is really easy to digest. And there's also a second one that I haven't, you know what? I actually did try to read that one. Oh, my camera's going to wobble. I actually did try to read that one, Clown in a Cornfield too. And I don't know if it's just because I don't know why. I was having a hard time getting into it, but I would recommend this one if you're kind of early on and you like horror stuff and you're like, I would like to just try reading a full book. This is a great one because you can read this in about 5 hours, 4 hours maybe. And it's a real good time. And look at that cover. That's kind of just nice to have on the shelf, I think. It's just a fun, I gotta hide my face, I think. There we go. Kind of just a fun one to have. Anyway, moving on. How am I doing? This is stressful, actually. I'm kind of like, because I know this is like, I think how I'm going to do this is just going to be like one big take, right? Like I'm not really going to chop it up. It's going to be very different. There's not going to be like the just cut to the next thing. It's going to be just like me being like, so anyway, moving on. We're going to go with the next one after ACOTAR was A Court of Thorns and Roses. Now, this book really caught me by surprise at the time. I was like super not into the idea of like, the kind of just the rough kind of breakdown of what I had been given. I was like, okay, so there's like their fairies, and they have like their own world, and they're like trying to defend it, and then they're in love, and there's like really like intimate stuff, and it's just kind of like, how am I gonna enjoy this? Turns out, really enjoyed this. This is the second book I ever read, which is kind of weird, right? Kind of a weird second book of all time to have ever read. But and mind you, I read a little bit in high school and stuff like that, but because people always say that, like, well, didn't you read in high school? Like, this can't be your first books. But honestly, I was like a pretty bad high school student, like not like bad, but just like I didn't do anything. So a lot of the books that were given in high school, I would just like read the Coles notes or just try to scrape by. You know what I mean? I just did not like reading back then. So really, these are kind of like my first books. However, so A Court of Thorns and Roses, I actually really enjoyed. I got sucked right into this. I was like, Feyre, Tamlin, you guys, what is going on here with your stuff? It's great. And I was just pulled right into this whole story and this world. And it was my first it was the second book of all time, so obviously my first real fantasy book. And I loved it. I was like, I didn't realize fantasy books could be this like kind of approachable, but also spicy, I think is the word a lot of people would use. It's a spicy book. There's lots of stuff that they do to each other, and you're just like, whoa, nice. So yeah, it was highly, highly enjoyable. I don't know how much I'm supposed to really like go into. Like, I don't know if I'm supposed to go super into depth about the storyline or what this is about. I don't want to spoil anything. But you will go through this book and you'll be like, wow, Tamlin and Feyre, like, whew, they got stuff that they're doing, and it's great. And then there's other characters in this book that you'll be kind of like, oh, I hate that guy. And when you read the second one, which I did, A Court of Mist and Fury, I got it back there. That's my favorite one, by the way. A Court of Mist and Fury. Love that one, actually. I still love it. I thought that was like such a great sequel, but it really throws you for a loop because everything you thought you knew and loved about everything in this book gets flipped, and then you're right off the bat you're kind of like, oh, like I don't know, and then but you'll just very quickly be like, whoa, yeah, I like this new thing. I like that. I like the direction this took. Probably like in terms of sequels, it's definitely better than the first one, I would say. A Court of Mist and Fury, I think, is actually my favorite in the whole series. Mind you, I have not read A Court of Silver Flames. I've only read the first 4. But that being said, A Court of Mist and Fury is certainly my favorite of the bunch, and it's really not even close, if I'm being honest with you. I just loved the whole stuff in Valaris, and I loved Rhysand and Feyre, obviously, and, all these new characters that get introduced in A Court of Mist and Fury. They're just great. It's a great little cast of characters, and it's just a really fun time. And there are some chapters in that one. I can't remember the exact numbers. I want to say like chapter 57 and 58 or 58 and 59. People kept on saying like, just wait until you get to these chapters. Like, you're going to just wait. It's coming. 58 and 59. I think I want to say it was like somewhere in there. And so I kept on waiting for those chapters to come, and they did, and they came. Yeah, they were like, those chapters hit you, and you're like, okay. Mm-hmm. Yeah, real good. So yeah, ACOTAR, the series gets a lot of hate. It gets a lot of hate, and you know what? Probably somewhat deservedly so. I would imagine a lot of veteran readers and a lot of more experienced readers probably read this or look at this, and they're like what? You're reading that? So much better stuff. I thought it was great. You know what I mean? But again, I don't have a huge back catalog of stuff to kind of go off, but. Nevertheless, I thought it was great. So again, if you're kind of new to reading and you're wanting to jump into the fantasy world, especially, this is great. But I also am going to get into my next book that I read after this. And likewise, if you're looking to get into fantasy, but you're maybe thinking you want something a little more like, I don't want to say serious, because that's like, I don't mean to like write off ACOTAR or anything like that, but just maybe something a little bit more heavy, with a little bit more thinking going on. You know what I mean? It's a good one, and it's a Brandon Sanderson book. You probably know Brandon Sanderson. That guy writes about 32 or 33 books a year, something like that. So here we go. This is the first fantasy trilogy that I finished, and you probably are. Most of you will already be like, I know what he's pulling out. Mistborn. This is the first one, and the first one is called The Final Empire. Kind of a weird name for the first book because it's got the word final in it. However, great book. I had heard from, Book Talk and just all the online people, like, hey, if you're looking for fantasy, Mistborn by Brandon Sanderson. It's the one to start with. It will kickstart your journey into loving fantasy. And so I was like, wow, okay. Picked it up, could not put it down. Absolutely loved this book so much. I really, really did. I really, really did love this one. I thought about it all the time. And, at that point, this was only like the third book I had read. So I was kind of like, well, reading a whole trilogy seems a little daunting. Like, I'll just read the first one and that'll be fine. But then I ended up getting The Well of Ascension, flew through that one, and then I got the last one, The Hero of Ages, flew through that one. I just could not stop talking or stop reading or following this story. I thought Vin and Sazed. Sazed's probably like my favorite character still to date. Like, of all the books I've read, I love Sazed. I thought Sazed was so cool. Vin and Elend were great. Elend has got a great character arc. Still learning things, but I want to say that's what that is. Just a really, really fun series. I would say that, again, if you're looking for a fantasy book and a fantasy journey that's going to kind of challenge you a little bit more, this is where I would personally start. I've also read Brandon Sanderson's The Way of Kings, which, some people would say, like, why don't you just start with The Way of Kings? It's the best one. Like, just start with the best. The Way of Kings is fantastic, but I will say I feel like if I had started that one first, last year is like my third book ever, I fear that I would have fallen off the reading train and been like, I think this is too much for me, because it is incredibly long. In terms of challenging, like, it's more challenging than Mistborn, but it's not like overly challenging. I think it's just the length of it. It's kind of like, it's a lot to throw at yourself if you're kind of new to this. But that being said, I now love big books, and I cannot lie. So anyway, Mistborn, Final Empire, fantastic. Kind of like if I could explain this in a way, it's sort of like a bank heist. Bank heist movies where there's like you got your team of people and each one has like their own special skill, and you've got this challenge that you've got to overcome together. It's kind of like that. There's like this team, and they've kind of all got their thing that they do, and they kind of all connect in the right way to do what they need to do in this story. And so just a real fun time. You really fall in love with the characters. I still think about them quite often. And there's actually a lot of talk about Mistborn turning into a movie or a TV show or a play or something, or was it an anime? Maybe it was an anime, something. And I really hope that happens, because I'd love to see this on the screen and just kind of relive the story and all that. Really good. What can I say? Brandon Sanderson really knows what he's doing. That guy is great. The sun keeps going behind the clouds. If you're like, why? What's going on here? It's like, the clouds are moving today. It is windy. Not in here, though. Not windy in here. So, I hope that kind of gives like a somewhat of an explanation as to what this is about, without giving it away. Just think bank heist in a fantasy world with a love story attached. And yeah, that's great. The Hero of Ages is a great conclusion to this book too. The ending I thought was perfect. I had no complaints with the ending. It was actually quite beautiful. I think I still kind of reminisce on the tingly feelings that I got after reading the ending. It was sad, because I was like, wow, this is like my first fantasy series, and now it's done. And it was such a final, the finality of the ending is just kind of very like, wow, we really did it. And, beautiful. I thought it wrapped up absolutely perfectly. If there's something that Brandon Sanderson, I believe, is most well known as doing, what am I trying to say? He's really good at. If there's one thing that Brandon Sanderson is known as being really good at, it is ending his books, I think. I believe that's right. And so far, I got to say that's true. Even in The Way of Kings, you get to like page 800 of 1,000, and at 800, you're just thrown into this like madness, and you're like, whoa. You just like the final 200 pages feel like 10 seconds. You're just like, what? Very similar to The Hero of Ages. And The Well of Ascension, the middle book, is equally fantastic. I gotta say, maybe unpopular opinion, actually definitely unpopular opinion, this is my favorite one of the bunch. I love the middle book in this series. It was very more kind of leaned on like fantasy politics and a lot of kind of standoff-ishness, you know what I mean? Just kind of like, what's gonna happen? But I really enjoyed it. I think a lot of people would consider this one the slowest of the bunch. I would say this was the most exciting for me. I really enjoyed just kind of, I feel like when things are moving a little slower, you can kind of just sink into the characters and the book a little bit better and kind of just really cozy up with them, if that makes sense. So yeah, just really enjoyed that. However, I'm also a huge middle book fan and middle movie fan. I always tend to like that middle one the most for some reason. And they typically, I think, it's just ratings, going by ratings alone, are considered the worst. I love them. Two Towers, Lord of the Rings, my favorite one. There's another unpopular opinion, I think. I just love it because there's no beginning, there's no end. It's just guts, I just like the guts. Anyway, so that's all I really had for today. I just wanted to do like a 15-20 minute one to kind of start me off here. That was fun. I bought a tin whistle. Speaking of Lord of the Rings, my son takes guitar lessons, and they had these tin whistles at the on the counter, and I was like, tin whistles, I think that's what they use for that Lord of the Rings concerning hobbits song, right? So I was like, I'm gonna get it and try. So this is where I'm at so far. Okay, ready? Oh, I'm sorry for your earphones. That's where I'm at so far. You know, that's a fun little thing to pick up and annoy your entire family with, because at first I think they found it charming, and now they want to bend this and just throw it in the recycling. Now, so yeah, that's my first YouTube video. Thank you for coming to YouTube and watching this. And, I'm planning to do this maybe like once or twice a week to start off and kind of see how it goes. Got lots of fun video ideas coming. It's just going to be a lot of me talking about books that I've read, and that's pretty much it. And just kind of hyping up books because I'm a big fan of them. I think they're good for you, and they're definitely good for me. That's going to be it. Love you. Oh, perfect timing.